Okay, welcome back. We are going to cover a very important uh, part of Series 7, which is suitability. You are going to see close to 20 to 25 questions on suitability on your Series 7, if not more. It is very important that you have a very good grasp. You can easily score points for suitability if you really understand the basics of it. So without any further talking, let's just dig deep into it. And quick reminder, I have the site here if you would like tutoring one-on-one, or if you would like to set a group tutoring, please feel free to go to the site and contact me, and I will be more than happy to work with you more in details. Okay, let's jump into it. So when we talk about suitability, let's have a review question here. Which of the following are appropriate investment strategies for a client with a 20-year time horizon? And you are given several options. A, holding less cash. B, holding more stock. C, holding less bonds. And now, of course, you have to decide which one of them is the correct answer. Let's first dig into some very important rules of thumb when we talk about stability, unless it is noted in the question. Very important, unless it is noted in the question. The younger we are, or the younger the client is, the more risk taker the client is, right? Think about it. When we are young, think about it this way. When we are young, we are more risk takers. We are willing to jump, like a 10 feet board, right? Okay, we are willing to go out there with our skateboards and do like crazy stuff, right? As we get older in age, we start to think twice before doing those same activities, right? Okay, and this is what, again, this is the rule of thumb. This is the majority of us, right? Yes, there are people 100 years old who are parachuting out there, but the majority of us is we just follow the rule of thumb, right? Which is the younger we are, the more risk taker we are, right? And vice versa. The closer the client is moving towards retirement, the more risk averse the client is. What does risk averse is? He has very little risk taking skills. Okay, he thinks about everything. Oh, I'm going to retire. I'm going to lose this income. I'm going to be on a fixed income. How I'm going to survive? What I'm going to do, right? So he starts to think more about what he can save. He starts to think more about how he can have a fixed income to live a very specific life, whereas there is more, lots of savings, right? We all talk about that, right? Okay. Very importantly, as we move towards more clients who are in retirement, they are really very, very risk averse, meaning they really have to count every penny they have. So very important, think about it this way. The younger you are, right? The younger you are 20 years old, you have 40 years. Let's assume retirement age is 60 years old. And you have about 40 years left for retirement. 40 years, right? You should be a very high risk taker. Why? Because you have lots of years left in the market and you should make good use of it. Let's say you are 40 years old and you have about 20 years old left for till retirement. In this case, you need still to be somewhat aggressive, but not as aggressive as someone who's 20 years old, right? So remember that. What if you are already in retirement age? You need to count every penny, right? You need to be very risk averse, right? This is the general rule of thumb. This is again the general rule of thumb for the majority of us. Your risk taker is very low, right? You count every penny. How I'm going to survive when I retire? When I lose my monthly income, what I'm going to do? Do I have to go and find a hustle job to cover 20 hours maybe of work? Again, you count about everything. You have little time left till retirement. You are already 60 years of age. What do? You have very low risk-taking ability. Risk takers. So when we talk about risk takers, remember risk takers, we said they are what? They are young, right? Most of them, again, we are going by the general rule of thumb. We assume that they are young, so they are risk takers. So what do? Hold more stocks. Of course, by now, after studying and reading the Series 7 book, you know that stocks are a much riskier, right? They are much riskier, right? Than if you hold the money in cash or if you hold the money in bonds, right? What would you do? Hold less cash. Why would you hold the cash, right? Think about inflation. If you hold, let's say, if you have $1,000 today and you hold it in cash, right, till you retire, this $1,000 will be still $1,000. However, what will it get you? Nothing, right? Remember the time value of money, and you studied that, you covered that as well in Series 7. So it is not as a risk taker. When you are young, it doesn't make sense that you hold the cash, right? You hold less cash. Of course, you have to hold some cash for your emergency funds, okay? And you hold less bonds. Why? Because historically, bonds have little returns compared to stocks, right? So you want to go heavy, you want to go very heavy in stocks, right? Very heavy in stocks. You want to invest heavily in stocks. Why? Because you are a test taker. Determined age, if you are young, years to retirement, you have a long way to go, right? You have a long way to go. Determine risk-taking level, you should be a risk taker. Why? Because historically market has went through cycles and has returned a good average rate of return. All what you need is time. So time, very important. Time, right? Time is in your side, right? Time is in your side. So if time is in your side, invest heavily in stocks. Hold less cash. Why? Remember, inflation. Why would you hold cash? Hold less bonds. Why? Because again, you're a risk taker. You want to make good use of stocks. And stocks historically has caught up with inflation more than cash, which loses all its value, and bonds, which does not hold as high as inflation. Again, going back to your bonds chapter, and as you know that because of inflation, interest rate has a vice versa effect on the price of the bonds. So if interest rate goes up, price of bonds goes down, and you studied that in your Series 7 as well. What happens if you are risk averse? Determine age. You have very little time left for retirement. Years to retirement, again, very little. Determine risk-taking level. Of course, again, you start to think twice, how I'm going to survive, okay? Let's think you are, again, applying the normal rule of thumb, the majority of us, okay, working Americans, okay, this is what we do, right? We start to think twice, how I'm going to survive on a limited income. So what do? You hold less stocks, absolutely. Why? Because risk-averse characteristics, one of them is you hold less stocks. Why? Because you are worried. Why? Because if you remember, stocks fluctuate a lot depending on the market, right? Remember beta? Okay, so stocks fluctuate a lot depending on the market. And because of that, what you need to do is you need to start adjusting your client portfolio, right? Modifying your client portfolio to start holding less stocks. What do you invest him more? Of course, you invest him more in bonds, right? Or fixed income, right? Okay, like cash, CDs, right? Okay, over here. Why? Because again, he needs to have, or he needs to know, your clients need to know how much is he gonna make per month in retirement. And as you get closer and closer to that retirement age, you worry a lot. Why? Because you don't have time. Whatsoever you have, whatsoever you can take out from your portfolio on a monthly income, this is what you will have to adjust your lifestyle to live. Okay, so as again, determine age, determine years to retirement, determine risk taking levels. So as you are moving more towards retirement, or if you are moving more towards your retirement age, or you are already in retirement age, you will have to adjust your client portfolio. Why? Because they are, general rule of thumb again, they are more risk averse. Very important, they are more risk averse. Very important, you might see this question and it might ask you which types of bonds you will not recommend for a client who is risk averse, or for a client who is very close to retirement age, or for a client who is in retirement age. Absolutely do not recommend junk bonds or corporate bonds. And the reason is, yes, absolutely, I hear you saying it out loud, because it has a higher risk factor. Okay, so junk bonds, corporate bonds, they have a higher risk factor. Okay, so I would not recommend them to my clients, especially if they are risk averse. If you are told they are risk averse, if you are told that they are in retirement age, or they are already retired, or they have very little years left for retirement, so I will be careful not to recommend junk bonds or corporate bonds to my clients. Now let's go back to our question. This is a question I proposed at the beginning of the session. Which of the following are appropriate investment strategies for a client with a 20 years time horizon? Perfect. So he has 20 years time horizon. So he's here, right? He has 20 years time horizon. So this means he is kind of what? He's kind of like maybe 40 years old. Let's just assume 60 years for retirement. Okay. Determine risk-taking levels. So if you have 20 years of retirement, till retirement, that's very good for you. This is good news. You still have times. Would you hold, let's go them one by one. Would you hold less cash? Absolutely. Why would I want to hold $1,000 in cash today, and in 20 years later, this $1,000 can get me nothing? You guys were here 3 years ago in what, 2021 or 2020 when COVID came, and we have already experienced the inflation that happened in just 3 years, right? So in 3 years alone, the $1,000 that you have before COVID is worth nothing now. So what about 20 years? So number one, never, right? Okay, it is not a good strategy to recommend my client to hold cash. So yes, absolutely, I will recommend to my client to build his portfolio or her portfolio to hold less cash. Absolutely. Holding more stocks? Absolutely. Why? Because stocks in general has more fluctuations with the market. So if the market goes up, absolutely, my portfolio will go up. My client's portfolio will go up. Is this something good? Absolutely. That's how he was going to recommend you, right? Okay. So it is very important that you advise your client to hold more stocks. Absolutely. This will be one of my options. Hold less bonds? Absolutely. Why? She still has time horizon left for retirement. So absolutely that client needs to be invested less in bonds, less in cash, and go heavily in the stock market. Why? Because overall, the stock market has a very good track record of proving that investors get a higher rate of return than, of course, holding their money in cash, which in a way loses money because of inflation and time value of money, and holding bonds, because bonds are never return the same rate of return as your stock portfolio does. So let's go back. Which of the following are appropriate investment strategies for a client with a 20 years time horizon? Holding less cash? Yes. Holding more stocks? Yes. Holding less bonds? Yes. And the answer choices 1, 2, and 3, all the above in this kind of situation. Okay, so thank you very much for taking the time to go through this quick review of suitability. I hope that was helpful. I hope this kind of forms a framework for you guys to kind of think about when you talk about suitability. Suitability is a very highly tested subject in Series 7, and you don't just see it, in one place. Mainly you study the whole Series 7, and after you study it, this is where the application comes. You apply all the knowledge you acquired through your Series 7 into the suitability section. It is a very easy section if you think outside of the box to answer the questions. However, the framework is really, you should know what are the different investment vehicles you have, and number two, what are the characteristics that specify the client you would recommend the investment vehicle for. And if you have all those skills, or if you have all this knowledge, then it is very easy to apply and choose the right answers. Again, thank you. Don't forget to click on the site. Contact me, guys, to schedule your first session. If you'd like one-on-one or group sessions for your Series 7, I am more than happy to be your tutor for for this journey. And congratulations on moving the first step, and the sky is the limit. Thank you, guys.